Hey community, this is Dr. Hugh coming at you, and today what I want to go over is what I've come up with is the top 24 reasons why you still have fibromyalgia. Now, fibromyalgia, if you're suffering with fibromyalgia, I want to let you know there is hope for you to get better. You just have to look outside the conventional box for you to get recovered. But I help lots and lots and lots of people recover from fibromyalgia. So before I get into my top 24 reasons, let me just go over a few statistics on fibromyalgia. Now, if you're listening to this on a podcast, down below you're going to see a link to the video on my website. So you can go and you can check out the video on my website. But if you're driving, listen to iTunes, you'll be able to get a lot of good content out of just listening to this versus seeing it. So before I get into the solutions, I want to go over a couple things that Mayo Clinic says about fibromyalgia. So if you just Google fibromyalgia, this is what they say. So fibromyalgia is widespread muscle pain and tenderness. Now, what I think about this is I think fibromyalgia, quote, the diagnosis is one of the biggest jokes and scams that's occurred in the United States. Now, before you get offended by that, let me explain that. What I mean by that is, just per the definition, fibromyalgia means that you're in pain. Like you already knew that you were in pain going to the doctor, and then in the conventional system, they say, wow, you have fibromyalgia. And then Mayo Clinic goes on to say it says treatment can help, but this condition cannot be cured. So why do I think fibromyalgia is a total scam BS diagnosis? Because fibromyalgia just means that you have diffuse muscle pain. And then they go on to say, Mayo Clinic says it cannot be curable. Well, I want to let you know that I've helped lots and lots of people recover from fibromyalgia. So in the current system, there's no drug that's going to be able to decrease and get to let me rephrase that. There's going to be no drug that can get to the root cause of your fibromyalgia. That's physically impossible. So this is a tool that the conventional system is using. Gabapentin, maybe they give you some antidepressant medications or something to help your fibromyalgia, but that isn't the underlying cause of the problem. So through basically 23 years of clinical experience, I've come up with the 24 main reasons why I think people have fibromyalgia. And if you are listening to this or you're watching this, you need to look at this and see, well, have any of these things been actually investigated on my case? Or has it been you've gone to the doctor and they said you have fibromyalgia and there's nothing that can be done, and that's the end of your situation? Now, when we talk about the top 24, there's not one of these that is like the smoking gun. So what I mean by that is when I approach cases, when I try and get sick people well, and I see a lot of severe chronic conditions, is I try and do a polytherapy approach. So if there's 5 or 6 or 7 things that we can do at one time, they might not be huge things, they might be small, minor things, but when they all add up, this is when it can take your body from a state of inflammation, which if you have fibromyalgia, you're in a state of chronic inflammation to some degree or another, and then we're just trying to reverse and take back that inflammation so then your God-given healing ability to heal and function can recover you. So, there is hope out there. I don't care what the Mayo Clinic says. If it says it's incurable, that's not my viewpoint. That's not what I've experienced clinically over 23 years of experience. So let me get in this PDF. And again, if you're listening to this, there's going to be a link somewhere where you can download these 24 what I consider to be the top things that need to be investigated. All right, so what I'm going to do is just briefly touch on these 24 possible reasons why you're having fibromyalgia really quickly. And then if you want to dive into the research, so there's lots and lots of research that I have here. So if you're watching this, if you see here like low vitamin D, now there's no top priority. It's not like vitamin D is the number one priority, which is number one. And then whatever the 24th is, I can't remember what that is. But the 24th one, let me just check right now. The 24th would be not enough digestive enzyme. So just because it's 24th doesn't mean that shouldn't be number one priority, right? So if you go and you look at this PDF, if you download this PDF, what you're going to see is a couple of things. One, you're going to see this number 1 right here. So if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you're going to actually see my references. So these references pertain to specifically fibromyalgia and low vitamin D. Now, also too, I'm going to have a link. If you just click that big number 1 there where it says low vitamin D, if you click that, that's going to take you to my website. And then I have basically a whole, a lot more information on vitamin D. So for example, vitamin D. Do you have suboptimal vitamin D? Vitamin D ranges in the conventional system 30 to 100. So if you have vitamin D of 35, you're considered fine. Well, that's not fine if you have fibromyalgia. You should be around 80. So that would be Number one is you got to check your vitamin D. Two, you got to make sure you don't have leaky gut. If you have gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, if you're using antacids, heartburn medications, if you're using anything to support your digestive system, this means that your digestive system is not well, and 80 to 90% of your immune system is in your gut. So let me say that again. 80 to 90% of your immune system is in your gut. So if you have a bad gut, you're going to have inflammation. If you have inflammation, you're going to have fibromyalgia. You're going to have chronic pain, chronic inflammation. So number two is you got to make sure that your gut, look at your gut, figure out your gut. Do you or do you not have leaky gut? Now, here's a caveat. What the research shows, medical research shows, is only 50% of the people that have leaky gut have GI issues, such as constipation, diarrhea, bloating, gas, right? So you could have a leaky gut and think you're fine, but yet you're still sensitive and you still have a leaky gut problem. So this is where the guided plan comes in, where we're actually trying to peel the layers of the onion away and get to the root cause of the problem. Number three is, do you have PCOS or endometriosis? Difficult periods, endometriosis, this can be a sign of hormonal imbalance. It can be a sign of too much insulin, high sugar levels. So this needs to be investigated. So that's number three. Number four is, do you have a leaky brain? Have you ever had concussions? Have you ever been dazed or knocked unconscious? Do you get dizzy? Do you have brain fog? Do you have brain fatigue? All these things would indicate that you have a leaky brain. Now, why is leaky brain so critical? Because your brain actually dampens pain. Let me say that again. Your brain actually dampens pain. So what does that mean for you? If you have a leaky brain, if your brain's inflamed, your brain cannot dampen pain. So if your brain cannot dampen pain, you're going to be more sensitive to any pain in your body. So if you have a light touch, if you hit something, you're going to be in spasm. You're going to experience pain a lot greater than someone that has a healthy brain. So this is critical. Your brain is very, very critical when it comes to fibromyalgia and pain, because it actually dampens pain. So a lot of people, I'll talk to people and I'll ask them about their brain, and they, no one's ever asked them about this. Well, have you been in any car accidents? Have you had any, have you been knocked unconscious? Have you just had like your bell rung? Did you see spots? Like, it doesn't have to be like you get in this massive car accident, you hit the windshield and you're knocked out. That's really not what we're talking about. It could be simple as maybe you played soccer and you took a lot of headers, right? It could be that maybe you played football and you were in sports and that you had micro traumas on your brain. It could be that you fell on the ice sometime and hit your head on the ice. It could be that you were surfing and somehow you got some kind of trauma and hit your head and caused a leaky brain. Now, when it comes to trauma on your brain, that can be accumulative. Just because you didn't have any symptoms per se when you were 20 and now you're 55, that doesn't mean that trauma on your brain isn't catching up to you now when you're 55. There's a thing, what we call priming of your cells in your brain. And what that means is they're primed, meaning that any small irritant will cause inflammation greater in your brain because you have this incident was there from prior. Number four is antibiotics. I see a lot of people that were hurt by antibiotics, specifically a certain class called fluoroquinolones. But antibiotics basically destroy your gut. They destroy your blood-brain barrier. And when this occurs, this is going to cause global chronic inflammation in your body. So you have to look at your history. Have you had a history of chronic antibiotics? This will make your body more susceptible to inflammation and pain. Number six here is you want to try what I call an autoimmune paleo diet. Now, what the heck is this? There's lots of different diets out there, and I don't think one diet should be recommended for everybody. Like, you need to do a trial and error. Now, over 23 or actually 24 years of clinical experience, I have found that when people have fibromyalgia, they have some kind of food sensitivities. It's gluten, it's dairy, it's soy, it's eggs, could be anything. The autoimmune paleo basically eliminates all these food sensitivities that you may be sensitive to. Now, when I say sensitive to, what that does is that causes more inflammation in your body. So again, if you're more inflamed, it's going to go to your muscles, and then your muscles are going to fire very, very easy. And this is going to cause chronic systemic pain, inflammation, quote, your diagnosis of fibromyalgia. So really simply, it's you're eating fruits, you're eating vegetables and meats. Now, you don't have to stay on this diet forever, but we want to do a gradient thing. Like, you want to try certain things, try 3 or 4 or 5 different things, and then move forward and see if that works. So a paleo diet, or autoimmune paleo is very, very critical. Number 7 here is anemia. Now, what I find clinically is one, that the proper blood work isn't being done to investigate to see if you have anemia. There's a lot more markers that need to be ran. One is ferritin. You can check. There's actually like 7 or 8 markers that can indicate if you have anemic condition, which I see the standard conventional blood work. It's just never done. It's just not done. And to be honest with you, to check these things, literally my cost on a good like iron panel is like $15. It's ridiculously cheap. Now, one of the things that happens when we talk about anemia, you could have anemia or you could have subclinical anemia. So what the heck does that mean? This is what I find more often than not is women, there's always a scale. This is more in women, right? There's a scale of basically anemia. Now, when I say subclinical, I mean, you could be at the low range of iron and you would be considered fine, but that's not enough iron for you to deliver oxygen to your cells. So when we talk about anemia, what is that? That's not enough iron in your body to deliver oxygen to your cells. So if you have subclinical anemia, meaning that you can't be diagnosed with anemia, this isn't going to deliver proper oxygen to your muscles. Now, as we go through these 24 top reasons, I'm hoping that you'll have some cognitions like, wow, I never had this checked, and I never had this checked or that checked. So this is where I just act as a guide, right? They're trying to connect these dots and see if we can recover you. So anemia is very, very critical. Subanemia, there's a lot of good research on that. Now, the 8th thing right here is gluten. Now, gluten sensitivity is very epidemic. And again, most people that are gluten sensitivity don't have any GI issues. Now, a lot of times I will hear people say, well, I've been checked for celiac disease and I don't have celiac disease, so therefore I can eat gluten. That's completely 100% false. You can have gluten sensitivity, but not actually be, quote, have the gene for celiac disease. And most people fall in the category of being gluten sensitive, meaning that no test is going to show that they actually are positive for a gluten sensitivity, but no test is actually going to show like blood markers to confirm like you are sensitive to gluten. Most people are gluten sensitive, which means that if they eat gluten, they're going to have some kind of problem. And one of the things is inflammation. God did not design us with the proper digestive enzymes to break down gluten. That comes from a grass. What animal eats grass? Which is cows. And cows have 4 stomachs. 4 stomachs. Human beings have 1. So cows have the digestive enzymes to break down these enzymes, break down the grass so you can absorb gluten. So that could be a possibility. Number 9 is magnesium. There is tons of research on this. Research shows that 60% of all Americans right now are magnesium deficient, which is a problem. So magnesium is needed in 400 enzymatic reactions in your body that causes your muscles to relax. So if you don't have enough magnesium, you're going to be deficient. Now, one of the things I do want to say about supplementation is when I recommend things with clients, a lot of my clients are really, really sick. So if you look at the back of the bottle for magnesium or fish oil or vitamin D, whatever that is, the back of the bottle is a dose for well people, right? So fish oil might say take 2 capsules a day. Well, that's for someone that doesn't have any chronic problems. Someone that has chronic problems might need to take 10 or 15 or 20. I don't know what you need to take because you have to do an investigation, right? So this is the things that can come in is you might say, well, I've tried magnesium, I take fish oil, but maybe you're not taking enough of them to actually convert in your body and start changing the needle to healing in your body. Perfect example, again, is a fish oil. So you could be fish oil is omega-3, which is EPA and DHA. And this has to do with the cell membranes. You need fish oil to make strong cell membranes and decrease your global inflammation. There's lots and lots of information on the internet on this. And one of the things is people say, well, I've tried to take fish oil and I've burped it up. So that's common. So I don't take fish oil. So there's a couple quote hacks for that. One could be that your fish oil is just a poor quality product. 2 could be that you don't have enough digestive enzymes and gallbladder activity to actually break down that fat, so you start to burp it up. The third hack is you can freeze your fish oil capsules, put them in the freezer, and then take them. And sometimes that allows the fish oil to bypass your stomach and get down into your small intestine, so then you don't burp it up. So that's a couple hacks with that. Number 11 here is we're going to be talking about mold. This is massive. I always run mold checks on people that have chronic diseases. You do not want to be suffering day in and day out and find out that you have mold, and literally the test costs $250 to see if you have mold or not. I've had people spend $50,000 on their case with all the special bells and whistles, and no one checked for mold. No one did the fundamental principles, the basic 24 principles. And guess what? They have mold. It's in their house. It's in their body. Could be a past exposure. Mold will cause chronic systemic inflammation. So you want to get checked for mold. That's number 11. Number 12 is your mitochondria. How well are your mitochondria? Now, your mitochondria, depending on where it's at, it could be in your heart, every cell in your body has mitochondria. Now, some cells have higher dense mitochondria than other cells. So, for example, your heart, in one cell, can have roughly 2,000 mitochondria in each individual cell. So if you have poor mitochondria function, that means that you're not going to produce energy, but not only produce energy, it also has to do with hormone production. It has to do with intercellular communication. It has to do with breaking down cells. The mitochondria actually will tell other cells in the body, this is a bad cell, let's get rid of it and start breaking it down. So you want to look at your mitochondrial function. Now, if you have fibromyalgia, guaranteed that your mitochondria are not well. So in the top 23 minus mitochondria, all these other things that we talked about will affect and will cause your mitochondria not to function optimally. Number 13 is H. pylori. So H. pylori is a nasty, nasty bug, and that can burrow into your gut, and it can cause autoimmune disease. There's lots and lots of research on that, so I always do a H. pylori test. Now, I had a client come in and they said, well, they tested me H. pylori through blood. You want to get a stool sample. Stool sample is the way to go. Like, is H. pylori in your stools? Because if it's in your stools, that tells you that it's an active infection. If it's in your blood, you're just checking like an autobody and not an antibody response, which is completely different. So if they check it in blood, you could have H. pylori from 10 years ago. If it's actually in your stools, that tells you it's a current infection. And that could be a possibility for your fibromyalgia. Now, I don't necessarily go and start killing H. pylori. This is where you want to do a systematic approach. I try not to kill things right away, and I try not to pull out metals and environmental pollutants right away, because most people that are sick, they're too delicate. You can't go in and start killing bugs, and you can't go in and start detoxifying and pulling out metals and chemicals and molds. Like, that's something that you don't want to do that right away, because people's bodies are too fragile. You have to build up their cell membranes, get their physiology, what I call their constitution, like how well their constitution is. You got to build that up first before you start going in and killing things and detoxifying things. So that's number 13. Number 14 here is blood sugar problems. You could have blood sugar spikes, or you can have blood sugar hypoglycemia. So your spikes can go either way, and anytime that you have increased spikes, that's going to cause inflammation, and then generally what happens is then you'll crash, and then your blood sugar will start to go down. So this is a very significant blood pattern, a glucose pattern, and I've developed a very simple protocol where you can buy a glucose meter on Amazon for $30, and within basically 5 or 6 days, you'll actually know, is this a problem or isn't it? This is the thing that you want to rule out. Like, what's the low-hanging fruit? What really costs minimum to find out if you have a problem? You can buy this glucose meter. The whole protocol is on my website somewhere if you go look at it or schedule a call. And we want to figure out, are you having blood sugar dysregulations? Are you having high spikes? And are you having low spikes? So number 14 on the PDF is just blood sugar problems, either high or low. This can cause massive amounts of pain. Now, number 15 right here is actually hypoglycemia. And why I want to specifically count this out is a lot of women that I deal with will have hypoglycemia. So their blood sugar will drop below 80. Anything below 80 really gets to be an issue. And if it's dropping below 80, that's still within the lab range, but it's not in the functional range. Now, you need a good supply of glucose to feed your muscles. And if you don't have a good supply of glucose to fuel your muscles, you're going to possibly have fibromyalgia. So that's number 15. Number 16 here is autoimmune disease. Autoimmune disease is rampant in the United States. People just don't know how to test it. In the conventional system, the testing is in my opinion, is not complete at all. There's some more advanced testing that will very specifically see, do you have antibodies against your muscles? Do you have antibodies which will cause inflammation in your nervous system to attack them? Do you have antibodies against your connective tissue? If you have antibodies and your immune system is actively attacking your connective tissue, you're going to have pain. So then if you have an autoimmune disease, that puts you in a whole nother realm of, now you have an autoimmune disease, and maybe your autoimmune disease is contributing to your fibromyalgia by attacking that. So 80% of all women, 80% of all people diagnosed with autoimmune disease are women. Now, just to give you a quick statistic, is in this country, we spend about $50 billion on cancer, where autoimmune diseases, we spend about $100 billion. So the devastation from autoimmune disease on a dollar amount is almost double that of cancer. So this is really, really significant. Number 17 is hormone dysregulation. Anytime that I work up a case, I always like to do basic hormones, DHEA, pregnenolone. You can test testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. So you want to do some basic evaluation on hormones to see, are your hormones really whacked? And you're going to know if your hormones are whacked. Now, clinically, what I see here is when people are inflamed, when they have all these other things, like maybe you have mold, maybe you have anemia, maybe you have low blood pressure, which I'll be getting to this will cause your hormones to be imbalanced. So when you look at these 24 different things, you really need to see clinically, like, if you have a bunch of these things, which ones do you want to start to address first? This is where clinically, where this is very, very significant. Which ones do you want to address first here? So this is where you need to take more of a strategic game plan. Like if someone comes in and they have hormone dysregulation and they have low DHEA and they have low pregnenolone, which are all really important hormones to have, but yet they have like hypoglycemia and then they have hyperglycemia, too much sugar, or maybe they have anemic problems. Like I'm going to try and figure out that physiology and just see if the God-given hormones will start to normalize after we normalize these things here. Next things are oxalates. There's lots of research on oxalates, but these are in foods that contain high oxalate foods, which would be like broccoli and spinach and celery juice. You can Google this, but these are small little crystals that will actually be put into your muscles, in your system, and cause pain, like kidney stones. Like these are oxalates, right? So oxalates are definitely, for sure, can be contributing to your problem and to your chronic fibromyalgia condition. Number 19 here is we have iron overload. Now, I do not want to emphasize this one, because clinically I see this a lot of times is people actually have too much iron. Now, too much iron is a bad thing. So not enough iron and too much iron is a bad thing. And too much iron is always 100% missed in the conventional system. I can't tell you how many cases I've helped reverse strictly because I've done the proper blood work and their ferritin is higher than what it should be. And ferritin is an iron storage. So just imagine it's how much iron your organs are storing. This is a critical part. So if your iron stored too much iron, they're going to rust. Just like if you put your bike outside and it starts to rain, it's going to start to rust. This is what happens to your organs, is they're going to start to rust and cause oxidative stress and cause lots and lots of damage. And in fact, I just had a client here who was about, 76 years old or so. And, she's had chronic pain her whole entire life. She's had chronic UTIs her whole entire life. And what happened is we did the blood work and she has high ferritin. So her body's rusting, so this is going to cause pain, and bacteria, bugs love to eat ferritin for snacks, for dinner, so they actually feed on iron. So if you have high iron, this is going to cause your body to be in a state of chronic inflammation. Number 20 here is low blood pressure. This is really common for women. I don't like to see blood pressure less than 105 or 75, and I have clients who will say, yeah, my blood pressure is 100 over 70. This is way, way, way too low. And why is that a problem? Because blood pressure pushes fuel deep into your tissues. This is the critical part. It pushes fuel deep into your tissues so then they can get the oxygen. So for example, let's say that you have subclinical anemia, you have low blood pressure, low vitamin D, low magnesium, and you have mild mold. Boom, bingo, right there. What's going to happen if we start to correct these things? You are going to get better. If those things are out and they're not addressed and then they're addressed, the God-given healing ability will be able to get you well because your body needs these things, right? God designed your body to have these things in a proper order, proper levels. Number 21 here is poor sleep. This is critical. I've come up with a protocol for sleeping on my website. If you just type in sleeping like a baby, but we want to get you sleeping. If you're not sleeping, you're never going to get better. You're never going to recover. So if someone's not sleeping, this is one thing that I'll try and work on right away. And there's a lot of things that can cause poor sleep. Maybe you have a hypoglycemic incident at night and that wakes you up. Maybe you don't have enough magnesium to relax you. Maybe you should try and take some Epsom salt baths at night. So there's lots of things that can be done to help your poor sleep. But again, poor sleep on its own is not the holy grail. You got to do a multitude of different things. Number 22 here is low white blood cell count. So generally, white blood cell count is 3.5 to 10. Now, when I see white blood cell count in like starting to get like 3.9, 3.5, or anything less than lab range, that tells me that your immune system is really, really run down. And your immune system is working overtime, and it just doesn't have the oomph because your white blood cell is your military, right? So that's the thing that's going to go around and take care of bacterias and viruses. And if that's weak, those viruses and bacteria, they can propagate in your body. And when this propagates, this can cause global inflammation and cause fibromyalgia. So, there's lots of things that can cause white blood cell count, but you want to rule that out and figure out if you have low white blood cell count, why is that and what can be done to help that? Number 23 here is autoimmune disease against your thyroid. You definitely want to rule out any autoimmune disease specifically against your thyroid. Research shows is that people that have hypothyroid conditions, here's another clinical gem. If you're already diagnosed with a thyroid condition, the research shows that 90% of people that are diagnosed with hypothyroidism have an autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's disease. So let me say that again. Is 90% of cases that have been diagnosed with hypothyroidism, 90% of them are autoimmune disease, and that name for that disease, if you have autoimmune disease against your thyroid, is called Hashimoto's disease. So you want to rule this out. Do you have an autoimmune disease against your thyroid or not? Do you have subclinical thyroid condition, right? So you might not have hypothyroidism, but your lab markers aren't very well. They don't look very pretty on lab, but maybe that's because you have poor vitamin D, poor magnesium, poor, maybe you have mold in your body, maybe you have poor blood sugar. Maybe you have low blood pressure. So you can see how this is start to accumulate in the big picture. Once you start to get this big picture, you can really start to reverse cases around. Now, 24, the last one this is digestive enzymes. You're going to need digestive enzymes to break down food. And what I find clinically is if you have a gut problem, that needs to be fixed. If you have a gut problem, you probably don't have enough, you're probably not producing enough hydrochloric acid or producing enough digestive enzymes. Now, I never start with digestive enzymes and I never start with what I call hydrochloric acid either. I always start with cleaning up the diet because you could be sensitive to wheat, soy, dairy, eggs, and that affect your gut. So your gut doesn't produce enough hydrochloric acid. Your gut produces hydrochloric acid and that goes in your small intestine. And then that hydrochloric acid tells the duodenum to produce, or that tells the pancreas to start producing digestive enzymes, and that tells your gallbladder to start producing fats. So a lot of these things will start in the stomach, and that will cause problems downstream north of the stomach. So digestive enzymes is definitely a thing that you'd want to consider. Consider in your case if you have fibromyalgia or chronic pain. So that's the top 24. Thank you if you've listened to this entirety of this. If you like this, please like, comment, and share this with a loved one. People need to know this information. There's way too much suffering out there in the world right now, especially when it comes to chronic diseases. And there's not enough love, caring in the system. I want you to be well. When clients come to me, they are cared for, and we dig down into the case and figure out what's happening for you to get well. So I thank you for listening to this whole thing. And remember, is where there's help, there's hope. Take care. Bye-bye.